G'day, my name's Chris and I play Adeptus Mechanicus. I've only been in the hobby since the beginning of 8th edition, so the army is relatively small in comparison to some of the others around, but I'm extremely proud of how they've been turning out considering it's my first army. What drew me to the Mechanicum basically comes down to the aesthetics of the models themselves. Although they're an absolute nightmare to assemble and paint, I quite enjoy the look and feel of them. The lore about striving for perfection through knowledge, replacing any part of their flesh with machine. There's this real secret cult society to them, and I feel sometimes we don't even really know who the Mechanicus are rooting for, other than their own agenda to gain as much knowledge as possible. Look, on the tabletop, I know Admech are really renowned for castling up and shooting opponents off the board relatively quickly. I tend to sort of steer my play style towards a mixture of both shooty and close combat options. Having fast movement is really important in 9th edition. Securing objectives is really important. So yeah, I tend to go both ways. So, some of my favorite models in the showcase. Let's start with the big fella, Belisarius Cawl. Such a weapon of a model to build and paint. I was so happy once I got him painted and onto the battlefield. He's such a real asset to my army, and in any list that goes beyond 1500 points in my opinion. Some troop choices I'm really excited to showcase are my Skitarii Rangers with the special weapon snipers. The conversions turned out really cool. Inspired by Bruce Willis in The Jackal, of course. So there's a few other snipers that I converted up to have spotters as well, just to mix things up. And so I always include as many snipers as I can for that reason alone. And look, same goes for my unit of 3 destroyers. I have 1 of 3 converted up real nice. My inspiration for this was from the Romu 31 character in the Mechanicum Horus Heresy book, which if you haven't read, I urge you to do so. It's a really great book. This converted Castellan robot is probably the longest I've ever spent converting and painting a model. It's grimdark, it's unique, and it fits the theme of my army, and I love it so much. You know, the servo at the back, an experiment gone wrong perhaps, feeding information into the robot to make it deadlier and deadlier. Finally, possibly my favorite model in the army, this converted Dragoon, though I do have weapon options to take it as an Iron Strider as well, but when it was built, it was intended to always be a Dragoon. I love it so much. You know, the wheel at the top reminds me of a destroyer droid from Star Wars, and I kind of wish that this model had an ability that once it was destroyed, those chicken legs, you know, crumble and fall apart, and then you could continue using the wheel at the top to further advance into the battlefield, you know, causing mischief and mayhem. It's a really great model in my opinion, and it was a real joy to paint. Speaking of painting, here's a breakdown of the color scheme to the army. Basically, I base coat the entire model in lead belcher. The primary beige white look is achieved through a base coat of Xandri dust, blended up through to Ushabti bone, Screaming Skull, and finally Pallid Witch flesh. The red is pretty standard, Mephiston red through to Evil Sun Scarlet, and finally Wild Rider red. Trims are used with Brass Scorpion and Gehenna's gold, and finer details are painted using a mixture of blues, greens, and browns. Yeah, so the weathering is a mix depending on the model, but basically it includes a dry brush of Typhus Corrosion, followed by some flicks of Typhus as well. Then a brown or red weathering powder using crushed up artist pastels. Thank you Midwinter Minis for that one. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this insight into my Adeptus Mechanicus army. It is the first in a series that I will be releasing between battle reports. We've got a really big 40k fan base in Australia with some incredible painters and armies, and I plan to showcase them to you all right here on Legends and Lore. So hit the subscribe button, 40k style, and I'll see you in the next video.